Welcome to this discussion, this conversation between myself, Anthony, your Ars Amorata community coordinator, and Jordan Luke Collier, head coach and personal mentor of mine. Um, Jordan is running with a new summer coaching course, uh, touching on some themes that I know are very pressing to many members and non-members of the Ars Amorata sphere. And we're here for a chat on some of those topics and to explore for all of us what Jordan has in store to share in the coming months. Jordan, any
No,
thoughts before we
great to
begin?
have you on this side of the camera. Obviously, you're doing so much for our community at the moment. It's nice that our wider audience and viewers can have a sense of who you are. And yeah, let's dive into some things. Often it's me and Zan with our weekly podcast, right? So it's going to be fun to riff on some different subjects in a different way with you.
Yes, I look forward to it as well. My first question, let's call it, is in regards to your first theme, which is on the idea of depth. Now, I had always thought depth to mean a certain kind of intellectual depth. So going into esoteric topics and really deep, meaningful topics in terms of conversation. But you define depth in your writing as of late as this sort of physiological depth of feeling, um, also a mental kind of neurological depth. But it's not that kind of profound conversational depth. It's more of a felt sensation, and that makes sense to me. I've definitely had experiences where I really felt into my body what was going on and kind of transcended some surface level tension and anxiety. Um, but you go on in your writing to talk about how shame holds a lot of men back
Hmm.
from going there, and with regards to women, it's often a sexual shame. Now, I noticed that that's often a barrier for me. So, for whatever reason in my life, I was told, be a good boy, probably some teacher told me somewhere that I shouldn't, I shouldn't hurt girls. And I kind of built this identity that, oh, I'm a good boy. I'm a nice boy. I don't do bad things. I don't hurt women. Right. And of course, like, we're not condoning that, but there's a fine line, I think, for a lot of men, and it gets blurred, right? What is healthy, respectful, celebratory behavior, and what is genuinely harmful, um, you know, behavior to avoid. How would you help? Right? I mean, and like, I know guys who are on
Hmm.
both sides, right? Who I look at and admire because they do things with such grace and for example, you and Zen have stories that I hear and I go, wow, that's just so eloquently executed, and other guys who they just it's I don't want to be emulating their behavior, um, but sometimes it can be confusing as to what's what. So how would you help someone who has that shame that they want to decouple from,
Yeah.
but are either scared to, right? Like maybe they're feeling into things for the first time ever, right? Like that can be scary, right? It's new,
Yeah.
it's uncharted territory. What kind of guidance would you,
Okay, so the reason
offer
I'm
someone?
laughing as you're asking this question is not that I'm unempathetic to the audience or to people who are going through challenges with this. It's because you're cobbling together four or five massive questions and then kind of launching them at me all at once. So I'm going to slow down. I tracked everything that you've asked. I'm going to slow down. We'll take this segment
Please.
by segment because everything you're saying is really important. It's just like, okay, bit by bit. Um, you started off by asking the question about depth, and it's true that at the moment
Yes.
in my writing and in my way of seeing a human being or a human relationship and the way I go about working with that with people, this redefinition of depth is central to everything that I see and do. And maybe I need a different word to depth, but I've had this handed down to me from my own teachers who are heavily formed by meditation and different spiritual approaches. So for now, we're sticking with depth, but it is a redefinition, because if you think of a deep man, am I a deep man? Are you a deep man? Typically, we have ideas of mental complexity or cultural sophistication. So if you went to a university, let's say, then you're probably deeper in some way. And especially if you studied something like philosophy, if you have a master's, even more. There are particular subjects and there's particular books that you might choose off the shelf. There are newsletters you might subscribe to. There are YouTube channels that you could watch that are deeper, right? And typically, if you are flicking through TikTok or whatever it is, you are seen, or you might feel yourself as being more shallow. And if you're sat in the bar making sex jokes and fart jokes, or talking about celebrities, or talking about football, you might think, or other people might judge you to be shallow. But if you're talking about Freud and Sartre, and you really go at your girl on the first date, and you take her right the way down to these things, what do you think of the Paris School and all this kind of stuff, then you're a really, really deep man. But depth in conceptual terms is really not always helpful for dating or intimacy. In fact, it can be really harmful, because if I put up the front of trying to appear deep and talk about all these complex subjects, I get my mind in the way of a much more profound feeling of being together, or a feeling of being connected, which could otherwise take place. And often the intellectual type, or the highly cultured type, really gets in his own way when it comes to intimacy, because he uses depth as a way to try and status signal and all these other kind of things to try and make himself look attractive. So that's not what I mean by depth. If you feel, wow, I haven't got an education in these things, how am I ever going to be deep? That's not what I'm talking about. I certainly don't want people to go and pick up all these deep books in order to try and compensate and feel like they have something to bring. The thing that you have to bring, your real human depth, you actually already have it. So answering your question a bit more to the point, again, spiritual depth, to think, God, have I got spiritual depth? That might launch you on such a crushing self-analysis. No, I don't have spiritual depth. I'm going to have to go and do all these retreats now. So no, everyone has different depths in the moment. Everyone, every psyche, yours, mine, the woman that you date tonight, the people in the room all around you, they can be inhabiting different areas of their own depth at one particular time. So I can wake up and think, God, there's a lot to do on my to-do list. I'm going to have a second coffee. Let's say I drink too much coffee too early and I get really shaky. And then I think, God, there's 10 things I need to do today. How am I going to choose what to prioritize? And before I know it, I'm all over the place. Right? So I become less deep in that moment with, I don't know, all of the spiritual practice or philosophical knowledge in the world you could have. But if you drink too much coffee, or you have too many things on your plate, you can get anxious and stressed. And therefore you don't have this delicious, more full-bodied depth that you could have. Right? And similarly, all it takes for so many men in the world is for a really attractive woman to walk into the room. And if you thought you were in a kind of deep-centered, coherent state of mind, all of a sudden this woman triggers something in you. So where do you go when you're attracted to someone? Where do you go when you realize, I actually want to talk to her? Now's the moment. I can feel that there's a window of opportunity to go and say hello, introduce myself, pull the trigger, right? Lay out an invitation. I could do that right now. But what comes up? And for a lot of men, it's that saboteur that Zan's talked about for so many years. Oh, I can't do that because now's not the time, and I'm not ready, and I don't know what to say, and I'm doing a course on what to say to girls, but still haven't finished it, so I'm not ready. So you have all these voices going about your head. In other more psychological disciplines, they call this the inner critic, right? I'm not worthy. I don't deserve to. She's probably only interested in guys with a lot of money or big muscles, and that's not me. And by the way, I just don't like my sweatshirt today, and the pants that I'm wearing are not good. And boy, you can see that being in some of these thoughts just take you out of the moment, right? So what I mean by depth is we can be sitting in those kinds of thoughts, thinking they're true, taking them as our own identity. I'm not worthy. I'm not ready. That's a big one for guys. I'm just not ready. I'm not in a phase of my life where I can be an attractive proposition. But that again is not your deepest self. And if you have ways, you can calm down these thoughts, just identify with them, and start to feel into different aspects of yourself. Most men that I work with have had a few experiences in their life where they were like, oh yeah, all those thoughts weren't there. And I just had a night and I was in a flow state. Don't know what happened. Maybe it was payday or something, or just had the right group of buddies around me, or it was our first week traveling. And I just hit this flow state and I went out and there was none of these thoughts. I connected effortlessly with all these people. Most viewers would have had a few glimmers of this experience. What's interesting is that when you're in a flow state, usually you're not actually talking about these, Freud and existential philosophy and all these kinds of things. You might be, but actually your flow state is comprised actually of, can be a lot of lightness and delight. Weird. Now we get this paradox where you can be really deep in terms of mentally free in your body, actually in a state of presence, flow, joy, feeling confidence, and we'll come back to what the nature of confidence is. You can be all of these deep spiritual attainments by accident. And then you walk around the world and you make, I don't know, profane jokes, or, you're really teasing somebody. And what for me is really delightful about being in this place is 1 minute I'm talking about my best spiritual insights, and then the next minute I'm making really profane jokes, and then the next minute I'm teasing somebody, but the next minute there's real compassion and empathy. What a dynamic way of relating, where you can cover all kinds of subjects and all kinds of ways of being within the same flow. I'll pause there. Yeah.
I'm smiling as you say that. Yeah. Well, I'm reminded of a time, well, last year when I was in Bucharest, and we had gone out, and um, I come from this sort of uh, philosophically deep place of thinking I need to be this guy, and I'm around some of the other Amorati, and they're joking and they're being really playful and crude, um, and I remember there was this girl with us, and she was just uh, acting like rolling her eyes and acting like, oh, you guys are just a bunch of goofballs, but she was loving it. She was staying. Like the the telltale sign that she was having a good time was that she was staying with us, right? And I was like, wow, like this is what it feels like to just be free. And it was a felt depth, and it was not a psychological,
Yeah.
philosophical depth. And I noticed that, and it was beautiful, and it was fun, you know.
One of the, just to
Um,
jump on this, one of the hallmarks that you're really present, or what I say in my work, you're in a state of presence, um, is the natural sense that you're already connected to everybody around you. And if you're here in your awareness, in your state of being, it's like, yeah, of course I'm connected to everyone around me. That's normal. So when you show up from that place, it's very easy to connect. You are connected. You express yourself. There's a flow. Other people are invited into that flow. So there's an interesting line, which is you go out with all your Amorati friends, and it's a lot of this, maybe even crass humor. But there's connection, an open connection in it. It could almost look very similar to the locker room boys' way of being together, where the teasing takes on this heart closed, caustic kind of one-upmanship thing, but it's not that. So it's the degree of what separates that from immature locker room humor is actually quite subtle, but it comes from a depth that includes an open heart, or includes real sensuality, or includes empathy, whereas the other one is the same behavior on the surface, but all those things are cut off, and there's actually an intention in there
Right.
to play the domination kind of status game. And I think what you're talking about has none of that. It's all of the fun of the locker room without any of the
No.
status or the destructive bullying intent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely. Another follow-up I had is that I know some guys who they've made sort of growing as a seducer or as a sexual man their life's mission for the last, let's say, 10 years of their life. And they have doubts that they're too one-sided. So they know a lot about seduction, the theories at least of seduction, but when it comes to a date, they don't have much to talk about. Like they don't know much about current events or even perhaps art. And I know we had a question as well earlier this year about, well, this is all great, but if I can't meet women, like what good is having depth and presence if I can't establish some sort of more surface level, more day to day brief connection, right, with words. So what would you say to a guy who is there, who's saying, well, I love this and it sounds great, and I want to have the blue fire and what is it? Blue
Strength.
fire, red heat, strength. Okay, but finds it a bit too abstract, and is worried that a woman might also find this way of being abstract. Is that
Yeah.
clear on what I'm asking?
I mean, if you're really wondering, how do I make a connection with a stranger? Like, how do I have a conversation and build some common ground? There's a skill set to that. You can pick up that skill set. And sometimes it is as simple as, where are you from? Oh, that's interesting. I heard about that place. What was it like to grow up there? Or why are you here now in Romania or in Poland or in France or wherever you've been? It's very, very simple, actually. Or if you go on a few dates and see what women ask you, they'll ask you certain questions. A lot of them are basic. What's your favorite band? um, what did you want to be when you grew up? Where do you want to go in 5 years' time? Things like this. So just copy and paste the best questions that women ask you and use them yourself. Now, this might sound like a really simple answer, and it is in a way. But the thing is, if you believe that enhanced conversation skills are your route to seduction, then you're going to be forever trying to out-clever yourself and out-clever the next person with always the next thing to say. The mind gets faster. You're always looking to be a bit more intelligent. God, how can I find something new and interesting to talk about? And you go on this whole busy cycle. Again, it's a bit like the mind space where you have too much coffee. And, I remember watching videos of Russell Brand when he was in his heyday. I hope this is not lost on everyone, but for the last decade before he went in his kind of current thing that he's in, he was well known as one of the great ladies' men of the world, but he would have this always, he could say the next thing. It was just this stream of improvisational flirting. And some guys are like, wow, I have to be this really chatty, talky man to outdo this, to always have something to say. And it's nonsense, actually. So the thing with depth is, if I sit there and I've got a really good feeling of enjoyment in my body. Like, God, I really enjoy just being here. Just enjoy the feeling of being me. This is great. I've been walking around Paris. I'm in Paris right now, and the other day I was walking down the street and I saw a particularly perfect row of houses, and the sun was going down. The sunset was really good, and the kind of late evening light was making a perfect row of Parisian houses glow. I just looked around, and I was staggered by how beautiful it was. And then I looked where I was walking on the street, and there was a woman, and she caught my eye, and she started laughing at me because I showed myself as being kind of breathtaken by the beauty. And then when I saw her, it was like I could have fallen over because I was walking and looking and gaping at the same time. And then I saw she clocked me and she laughed at me. I feel really good just walking around here. I feel really good walking around in my life when I have a few hours and I can let my mind settle down and focus on what I'm interested in. Wow, I love the simplicity of being. So if a woman comes into that space, let's go and meet and have a glass of wine at 8 p.m., you and I, and we'll get somewhere with a bit of sunlight and we'll sit and we'll talk. I will sit there with you and just ask you, hi, nice to see you. And as Zan says, like, what? I invited you for a glass of wine. What had you join me? What a lovely question. Now, because I'm asking that from a depth, which is I'm enjoying the feeling of being myself. I'm enjoying my body. I don't have a busy brain. I'm just here. When I ask that question, it really seems to land, and it feels earnest and true and sincere, and it kind of melts open defenses, and it kind of slows down the mind. And it's my question is an invitation for her to really share what had you come. And then I might ask, so you're not from here, where are you from? Well, I can ask a question like, where are you from? Like I'm data seeking, or using your answer to spur on the next clever improvisational thing that I'm going to say so I can start tying some conversational knots. Before we know it, we get lost. But I could just say, like, where are you from? And then really listen. And it's the same question, but it just seems to open up a greater felt feeling of connection. So I have kind of discovered that sometimes the simplest conversations end up being the deepest. And if she says, you know what, I'm from Ontario, Canada, well, I might use that. If I'm being really clever at conversation, I might use that to weave it into this one time I went there for a week and this, that, and the other, and kind of show off how worldly I am. But if I listen really carefully, I might just have another curiosity. Oh, you said this, but that's really interesting to me. Tell me more. And it's funny because as I say this, I'm aware that we're making a video, and I'm almost slowing down my mind to the level of the village idiot. Like I'm unsophisticated and I don't know the things of the world, but actually the curiosity becomes much more real. So this sense of wonder that Zan almost talks about, look, we've just been walking around and I saw this light come off the building and I'm sat here and I'm with you, and this is such a beautiful moment. I'm filled with this kind of feeling, and it's very wonderful. So this is why I want to invite men to feel depth. And another way, and I've just defined this, I feel delight and enjoyment in my own experience of being me. I feel a sense of excitement. I feel wonder. I feel pleased to be alive. Well, when I feel these things, I can have the most simple 5-year-old conversation. What's your favorite color? What about that? Most dating experts will say, well, that's the most retarded thing in the world that you can ask a date. It is a little bit, but I'm stripping it down to basics here so that you can see there is a different thing going on in a connected conversation than there is in a very clever, strategy-laden conversation, which is what most people are trying to have.
It almost reminds me. It does remind me of a conversation between two people who are like on mushrooms, and they're just talking about, wow, like the color blue is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so cool. Like that kind of
yeah,
ego stripped
yeah.
connection, right? Without
I'm
like still really, of course. Um, if I may though, like what if a guy does not feel that that appreciation for being alive, does not feel that genuine curiosity for her, and he is in his head, he is nervous to be there, he is swimming in that pool of anxiety at
yeah.
that table with her at that cafe, like um and maybe he doesn't quite see it, like how do I get to that place of wow, I'm here with you and I'm enjoying this
So let me
for what it is.
answer your questions in a 1-2 kind of punch, because what you say about the mushroom trip is very true. I am talking about an altered state of consciousness, or a deeper state of consciousness. I'm navigating the land of women, my attraction, my relationships, my intimate encounters from a deeper state of consciousness than what I was able to 5, 10 years ago. That's depth. So whatever philosophy we include into this is actually secondary. The main thing is I'm in a journey, like a medicine journey. I'm walking around life, and I feel more depth, and it redefines everything. It really does. So when people say, and a lot of guys, I join the Amorati, I want to find brothers and I want to have a deep conversation. Well, they don't want to talk about the technicalities, because sometimes we talk about the technicalities, they get tired, put high philosophy on the table. What they actually mean is, I want to come together in communion with a few of my friends and feel like we had a conversation so good that it felt like a mushroom trip. That's what they're looking for. It's a communal experience of connection. So it's very true. And when I sit with a woman, I have learned along the way to be in a kind of state of awareness in which I feel somewhat drunk by the beauty of the moment. And in particular, I'm going in blank, keeping a blank mind, curious intention. Let's see what unfolds. I'm not going to force my own will or agenda. Just because I've got a date tonight doesn't mean I will want to sleep with her. When I discover her, the energy might really not be like that. So I've got quite a clean intention, other than curiosity and to really see. But when she comes, let's say she feels good in herself. She did her pre-date ritual. Her hair is nice, her clothes are nice. I see and smell the effort that she's put in. Well, I can feel drunk on that. The kiss, the texture of the embrace when she comes in, the first scent of her perfume. When she looks at me, her eyes dilate a little bit and I notice, cheeks flush a little bit. All that does things to me on the inside, and I get a bit drunk off that. And then we start to, our energies are now mixing. Our energies don't just mix in the bedroom when we have sex. Our energies mix as soon as she comes into the room and I notice her. She gives me feelings in my body. And as we sit face to face in a private moment like a date, well, there's a lot of input. So the way in which I get drunk on her is the way in which I show up and speak to her back. I think a lot of guys are going to understand me. It might sound a bit advanced, but I like I like that it's there. We can come back to this. But to answer your other question, which is, let's say I'm anxious and I'm divided and I have all these different parts of my ego, which are they all think different things. They all want different things. This part wants to get laid really quick just so it doesn't feel like a loser. This part wants to actually just go home and play video games or go on the online course again because I feel safer. This part just feels out of its depth and it's got like memories of being rejected at school. So if you don't feel good and happy in your own experience and you want to connect with women, I would say the most important work that you can do is to feel really good about your own self, to feel good in your body, and to learn how to deepen your own sense of self so that you don't believe all these saboteur thoughts. I might still have some from time to time and think, God, I'm really thinking that. That's not really who I am. That there has to be a journey where you disidentify from these thoughts. You stop believing that they're you. You have a way where you can work with them, to stop them, to slow them down, to ease them off, and you come into a place of enjoyment in your body. There's not really a shortcut for this work. but I don't see much of an option, because let's say you're anxious and you really want to get laid for a sense of self-esteem, and you really want to take loads of action just so that you don't feel like you're stuck in inertia. Let's say that's your motivation. Well, it doesn't matter what training, what conversation skills, what seduction skills, how good you are at sub communication, all the rest of it, that doesn't matter, because it's built upon so many layers of self-rejection, anxiety, believing in these thoughts. It's going to be really difficult for you to ever get a sense of satisfaction and meaning from your dating life. If you don't feel enjoyment in yourself, but you think, oh, I'll just get a nice woman so that then I can get some enjoyment through her. Well, it's very difficult, if you don't feel enjoyment in yourself, to get the enjoyment through her. She won't feel that attracted to you. So it's like, God, this guy, and I mean, I had this for so many years growing up. This guy is after me. I kind of like him, but it feels like there's something he doesn't like about himself, and he's trying to grab that from me. So there's a lot of thoughts here in your answer, but the good news is that it's not a ladder of worthiness that you have to climb up. You're bad at seduction, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Now you've got all the skills and you can do stuff. It's more like, okay, you've got all this anxiety and self-rejecting thoughts and a sense of separation running through you. Well, let's see how that's made up, and let's see if you can understand that, unplug from it, dissolve it, and see if you can let parts of those things go. And you might discover on the way that you have emotions that you have to face. Yeah, some things that you've been ashamed of in the past, or the parts of yourself that you keep a secret from the world. There has to be a way in the end that many of those come out. But as you do that, you start to come close to a real sense of enjoyment of life. I believe the world is so beautiful, it's here to be enjoyed, and at some point we become capable of actually really doing that. Everyone, not just the deserving, not just the hustler, not just the one who goes on 1,000 dates to build his skill set.
So what you're saying is beautiful, and it's radical, because it's, I believe, not the place that most people today are coming
Yeah.
from. And as you know, I'm back sort of working a regular job, and I'm sort of back in society, if you will. And I'm finding that these things are like, um within the Amorati, it's beautiful to talk about these things, that people get it. Some get it maybe more than others, but everyone understands what you're talking about, and we have a shared ideal, a shared vision, a shared goal. um I wonder what you think about. Let me rephrase that. I find myself struggling to go to these places with, sort of the average person, because I don't want to be outcast. I don't want to be. I want to maintain a certain image, right? I want to be accepted. And I'm afraid that if I go into this territory, uh, not necessarily with words, but just to have such um, a wonderment about me, and a curiosity that's quite frankly rare, that people will think I'm a weirdo, or a freak or something. And I've already had that, and it wouldn't be the first time, but like, um, I mean, yeah. What do you say to someone who doesn't want to be, who has a reputation, and has this image of themselves that they want to maintain? Is it possible to maintain that? Is it more of a, you know, do you have any words of consolation? Might it actually be that, hey, like, this is such a desirable quality that people will virtually unanimously accept you and love you, because they feel this from you, and it's
So
like an
you're
addictive kind of.
just to try and
What are your
get
thoughts?
clear on your question. When you go back to normal society and you speak to the average working Joe, you're like, how am I ever going to connect with this guy? Because I've just come off this real spiritual high, and my whole way of seeing the world is different. How are we even going to have a conversation? Well, or
Yeah, or if I show up with this curiosity and love for life and they don't, are they going to judge me? Are they going to
oh
is that going to hurt my chances at exceeding at excelling in the workplace? Because I'm now this guy who's all spiritual and whatnot, and people are gonna not like me anymore because I'm not in, What are your
no, I mean, I've
thoughts?
come off the latest eye gazing retreat and gone home with too much, bearing into people's souls. So there are definitely spiritual practices that can give you a, a slightly different and confrontational embodiment for the rest of society, right, to deal with. But what I'm talking about is actually a lot more simple. So um, if you're if you're genuinely curious and accepting of other people, let's say you go on a date, you met a girl, Julie, off Tinder, and she's literally never been out of the small Canadian town that you're in. And you're like, God, I've just been to 5 different continents and all these spiritual retreats. I have an advanced psycho-spiritual training within me. And now I'm going to bear it all down on little Julie, who's never been out the state, didn't even finish high school or whatever it is. Um, there, yeah, there's a way you could fry her circuits, right? If you bring like certain capacities, but the fundamentals are things like acceptance and appreciation. Do you appreciate the beauty who is sitting here in front of you? Do you accept her as she is without being more smart or more worldly? Are you curious about her life without her, having to articulate it in really good ways? Um, these are really simple qualities that most people like, and they're quite unoffensive, actually. If you come back from college and you start talking about the fancy things that you learned, then you can make people feel really, really silly. But if you come back and you're like, "Oh, hi, Julie, tell me about your life," and so on, I mean, you can be very humble about the size of the adventure. We'll talk about myth, the size of the myth that you lived. Yeah, whatever. You have an interesting life, whatever. But in that moment, however, let's say, uh, unsophisticated the people you're speaking to, natural curiosity and love for fellow man, like, it's so never rejected. And if someone says, God, Anthony, I hate him so much, he's always so curious and kind and playful and joyful. What an asshole. Well, clearly it's their problem and their projection, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, sure.
this doesn't tend to
Uh,
weird people out. No. What can weird people out is, I went on this big adventure to become this great ladies' man, and now I'm going to seduce everyone because I learned all these seduction techniques. Well, these seduction techniques can be very,
mhm.
very thrilling, but if they're not coming from a base of feeling really connected with yourself, that's where some of the how do you call it, the vibe that doesn't quite sit together. I'm looking for a word here that escapes me. Discordant. There is a discordant vibe sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't want to go off topic, but I'll just say this. I mean, being in North America, um, there is and having come from Romania last year, there is a difference. There is a stigma around um, dating in general, and um, women do have their guards up a lot more, right? Um, and it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It is what it is. Um, and I will just say that in my experience, um, I've not had anyone. I guess I'm kind of answering my own question. Respond negatively to genuine curiosity and appreciation,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'd pick up on the final part of your first question, which is the sexual thing, because this is the real piece that that so many of our men are trying to understand. If you have such a beautiful broad base in delight, acceptance, curiosity, appreciation, if you're really vast in those things and you bring a lot of that to the table, well, you can bring acceptance, enjoyment, appreciation, curiosity, pleasure towards your own sexuality. And as you do so, if you feel real curiosity and pleasure and enjoyment about your own sexuality, that starts to permeate out as well. It's invisible, but other people start to follow your lead. You don't need to make sex jokes everywhere to show that you are sex positive or whatever it is, or tell everyone, "Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm polyamorous. How do you do? I'm so positive." You just have this silent inner positivity towards your own sexual experience, and that's the thing that other people will follow. So, speaking in terms of depth, over the course of a day, I'll be thinking all different topics and all different things. I might be anxious and feeling not so good, overthinking, trying to control my life. But then there might be other moments where I feel really at peace and really relaxed and maybe even playful and with a joyful spirit. Whatever my reality of my thoughts throughout the day there is always activity going on in my genitals, let's say. So there is always sensation if I want to feel. Can always feel and notice right now, what do I feel? What do you feel in your genitals? Is it hot or is it cold? Is it tingly or is it numb? Is it, tight and contracted? Is it loose and free? There is an experience happening down there in your lower body. So people say, well, how do I get this upper and this lower energy? Well, the first thing is to realize that there is already lower energy happening. There's energy circuits, there's energy currents in the lower part of your body. But then there is all the hormonal, biological activity that happens down there as well. Production of sperm, dilation of blood vessels, I'm getting beyond my pay grade here, but like the transmission of nutrients, from the food and from the stomach down into different parts of your body to regenerate and recharge what's there. So there's always a fluid process happening in your lower body. The invitation is just to notice that more often. So I have some specific embodiment practices and then awareness exercises to deepen your living connection with what's happening in your lower body. And the more you deepen that, the more you realize, like, it doesn't matter what I'm thinking about all day long or what I'm talking about with other people. There is always this primal sense of vibrating animal that's in my lower body at all times. And it can be asleep and purring and sweet and cuddly and cute, or it can be fiery and full of energy and looking to pounce. And then the question is, how do I relate to that? And this is crucial, do I still have my sense of pleasure and enjoyment, even when my lower body is feeling virile and maybe even tense and uncomfortable with the arousal that I feel? Or is it like, God, I hate it when I feel turned on? What if someone notices? What if someone sees? What if I can't get out of this? What if an embarrassment happens? What if someone sees me at work? Or, even if there's nothing to see, they might look over and think I'm a creep, like, just because you're sat there feeling some things. So we all have this fluid process, but what does the mind do with this? For a lot of people, it turns our natural sexual systems into something that we are uncomfortable with. So what I'm looking to do is to help men specifically understand how they turn something that should be naturally or could be naturally so enjoyable and rich and liberating and wild and an exploration and vulnerable at times, but very life-giving, how that can become all of those beautiful things rather than this cold, detached state of exile that so many of us experience. like, God, I can't wait to go home where I can, put on my favorite porn and close the door and no one will know. And then I get to have a release. No one's ever going to find out about this, right? But that's how some people deal with their fluid process in their body. And just to cap off on this aspect of blue fire, right? So blue fire is a quality of depth and a quality of presence that I've been working with some of my clients over the years. And this came through very strongly with a client recently, which inspired the name of the course. And we were sat there, and after a long meditation in our coaching, he was like, yeah, I can feel that blue fire. And in his words, it's not like a red fire where I see a woman and I'm so turned on, I have to have her, and then I launch at her and I try everything to get her immediately because I'm impatient. This sense of blue fire is, I feel all the arousal and turn on in my lower body. I literally feel the blood vessels dilate and things move and things energize, and things get longer and wider and deeper and bigger and all the rest of it. And I take a big breath and I'm like, this is fucking cool. I can sit here with this feeling, right? I can sit here and really enjoy my arousal without actually having to act. This is the radical departure. I don't have to act. I don't have to approach her. Don't need to get her number. Don't need to clever talk her into bed. I can just sit here and feel this blue fire, which is a sustainable erotic force in my own body, and breathe it and feel this as me. This is who I am. I'm not this silly saboteur. I'm not enough. You're not. You need to take another course. That's not who I am. But this sense of blue fire is who I am. I look at the beautiful women of the world. I look at the world and I feel aroused and I feel ready to go and I feel no urgency. I can sit here as I am. And then typically what happens for men who feel this positive enjoyment of their own sexual force, I hope I've explained clearly the steps of going there here. You feel this positive experience of your own sexual force, and you feel, I can just enjoy this without having to do anything about it. That's when quite amazing things start happening around you, which is where connections become sexual without you having to try. Women give 50 times more interest in you without you having to try. They feel that there's something going on with you. He's got this mysterious sexual energy. I don't know what it is, but it's like your blue fire lights up a corresponding fire in her body, and you can do a lot less. I'm not saying don't show up. I'm saying no, when it's the moment, you might just have a small window of opportunity. You might have to walk over there and state your invitation. Sure. It's not a get out of jail. You just sit there as a Buddha on fire and the women will approach, but that stuff will also happen. Yeah. And finally, the amount of mental noise dies off.
And I would imagine that, well, yes, that when it is time to make an approach, let's say it's easier because all that fear it's not there. It's okay. Now it's time to go over.
Let's say I have a perfect experience of my own depth, and I have a perfect experience of the blue fire within. Yeah, that can happen. And sometimes I'm unself-conscious and I feel this and I just spring into action and it's done before I even notice it. That's wonderful. More commonly though, I feel a little hesitation or vulnerability. I hear a couple of voices in my head, and yet I feel this real virility and fire in me. I'm turned on and I'm enjoying it. And I have all these things at once. Maybe you should not do this, or maybe there's a guy around the corner. Then I look, is there a guy around the corner? No. This is actually a little bit vulnerable. You don't know what's going to happen. Everyone is going to be in this new experience of having lost their coordinates for a few moments if you approach her. Yeah, that's true. Is that okay though? Is that okay? And then the blue fire. Okay, this feels really cool. This is an expression of me loving myself if I go and speak to this girl. Let's go and do it. So this is a human approach, right? It's not like I'm going to go get so deep. and so turned on that I'm never going to be vulnerable again. No, actually, for me at least, the vulnerability comes back and becomes richer. But it's, what if I bring this amount of force and strength and conviction, and I feel a little bit vulnerable and uncertain, and I include that I've got one or two insecurities, and then I act anyways. I mean, this is a real full package for deep connection.